I think everybody acknowledges that, we've got this huge demographic wave upon us, and that's great. But what the past looks like is not what's going to set us up for success moving forward.
Welcome to Season 7 of Bridge the Gap, a podcast dedicated to informing, educating, and influencing the future of housing and services for seniors. Powered by sponsors AccuShield, Align, NIC Map Vision, ProCare HR, Sage, Hamilton Captel, ServiceMaster, The Bridge Group Construction, and Solinity, and produced by Solinity Marketing.
Welcome to Bridge the Gap podcast, the senior living podcast with Josh and Lucas, a great preview for the NIC Spring Conference with a great guest, returning friend to the show. We want to welcome Head of Research and Analytics, Lisa McCracken. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, guys. Always good to be with you and excited to talk about 2025.
That's right. It's amazing that we're already talking about this. We had a great fall conference and already looking forward to the spring conference. Is going to be March 5th through 7th, 2025 at the Marriott Marquis in San Diego. It's a great spot. We always look forward to the spring conference when it hits the West Coast there. We enjoy it, getting to see our peers and the people in the industry that are so passionate about this. And, Lisa, there's some difference between spring and fall for a variety of different ways. So for people that maybe have only attended a few times, or maybe they haven't attended, they're looking forward to it. Or, I've even heard some people, they say, well, I just attend the fall conference.
Right.
What would be the reasons and the differences between the fall and the spring conference?
Good question. And there's certainly some overlap. I mean, the core of NIC is always going to be seen in our sessions and who attends and so forth. And the combo of networking and educational insights that people can schedule their day with. But so our fall conference is the larger one of the two, around 3,000 individuals, but we get around 2,000 at our spring conference. So it's still a very sizable event for, again, networking and important meetings and to get some insights into what's happening in the sector. But the spring has a little different bent to it. And we do have a greater focus on some of the health aspects, wellness, prevention, value-based care. You're certainly going to see that as people go through the sessions. But, we're going to be talking about our core topics, capital. We're obviously going to be in a new administration in 2025. So we're going to be talking about that. You can't ignore the elephant in the room, for lack of a better term, in 2025. But, so we're going to be talking about that. But then, when we hit topics such as, we talk about middle market and active adult and age tech, all of them are a little through that lens around care and wellness. So how do you provide care for a middle market older adult, or what data is important when we're talking about value-based care? So that's definitely a thread that's a little different in the spring than what you generally see in the fall.
Well, Lisa, that's exciting. So changing the value proposition, you can't help if you go to NIC's website and start talking about and looking and booking your hotel, you're going to see that everywhere. So what does that encapsulate? What's the meaning for that big title this year?
Yeah, that is the theme around the value proposition, and it's for the customer. It's around the value proposition for the customer of tomorrow, and also the right capital, and what's that look like in the future. I think everybody acknowledges that we've got this huge demographic wave upon us, and that's great. But what the past looks like is not what's going to set us up for success moving forward. So, how do we think differently about capital? We actually have a session on evaluating operating companies and bringing capital into operators and not as much the real estate, which is historically where all the capital is tied into. So, that's a very different lens and looking forward in our industry. The value-based care and what that means for senior housing and the role they play in the lives of the adults that live in the communities, that they operate on a daily basis. So it's definitely, acknowledging this repositioning and different line of thinking that we're going to need to really be successful moving forward. We've got the demographic tailwinds, but we need more than that. And I think that, the sessions and the insights from a really esteemed panel of speakers is going to tee those attendees up for some really great insights moving forward.
You touched on investment to operating platforms, operators. I'm sure for many of our listeners, that perked their ears up. And so that is a change. I think for many it's exciting, and maybe it's like, hey, it's about time, and that's probably a theme. But because there's so many emerging new operators, new operating platforms, and I think we're only going to see more of that as
Right.
real estate development starts to open back up again, hopefully over the coming months and years. What does that look like for a first timer that's
Yeah.
like, okay, now's the time. I've never been to a NIC. I'm going to go to spring. I'm going to go to fall. You all have a whole kind of, I would say, almost onboarding program
Yes.
for first time operator attendees. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you bring that up because we have heard over the years and many people say, "Oh my gosh, I go there and it's a little intimidating because there's thousands of people there and so forth." So we really try to set up those first time attendees, whether you're an operator or you're, a tech company coming into the space, or maybe even a new capital partners. There's some new capital at the table that's, has not been in historically. So we have some things in advance that we will send those new time attendees. We've got a webinar that you can, a recording you can click on and just get the lowdown of just the setup and the sessions and the schedule. But we also have a first time attendee gathering there. And that's always very popular. Not only is it helpful to get the lay of the land, and we've got NIC team members there, volunteers, committee members who help us pull together the conference. So you got those folks, but it allows for networking. So you can get some early relationships and connections there, which I think is really important for that first time attendee. And, you look back, everybody has their first NIC, right? And there are many, people that say, I remember that first time and I made these connections, and then it really built upon itself in future conferences and events. So we do have some of those. We know who the first time attendees are. We track them and we provide some support to really make it a meaningful experience for them.
Well, from a Nick insider, and it couldn't be more insider than you, Lisa, what are some key sessions, key speakers that we've got to go ahead and just put the asterisk beside, that we do not want to miss this Nick in general, but we want to make sure as we're building our calendars out that we don't miss?
Okay, so this is like picking among your favorite children. So let me call out a few of them. So, I mentioned, we've got this healthcare lens, but again, the core of NIC is definitely, we've got to be talking about some of the capital environment and what's just the outlook for the sector. So we're actually launching the session. Our kickoff main stage event is actually going to be myself. We've got Eric Morton, the CEO of NIC Map Vision. We also have a gentleman from the Mortgage Bankers Association, head of research from Harrison Street. So what are they seeing in terms of, capital accessibility, the future outlook? So that's going to be a fun kickoff. I think that's really going to resonate with a lot of our, historical core, whether you're an operator or capital partner. We do have Joe Coughlin and our very own Bob Kramer talking about the customer and the consumer. What is that value proposition? We know Bob is a very vocal advocate around, what got you here won't get you there, and what the next generation of whether boomers or older adults are going to need. We've got great lineups around value-based care, as I mentioned, sessions on active adult, middle market, again, some additional changing customer preferences. I think it's important to note too that we have both the main stage events and again, guest speakers around that. And we will be talking about some political commentary as well. But we also have these innovation labs. They've become very popular in recent years. So, you've got several hundred individuals in those main stage sessions. It's a little less interactive, but once you get into those innovation labs, that allows you to interact with the experts, with the panelists, maybe some small table and work group exercises. So what we've really tried to do is marry up both of them, and it really depends on, what you're looking for. And, a lot of the main stage events are followed by some of those innovation labs. So we've tried to mix up the education platform a little bit to really resonate with, I think, regardless of who the audience is.
Amazing information. And Lucas, I'm just sitting here thinking back, 8 years ago, some of our earliest content was captured at the NIC event in Chicago. And for all of these years, you and I have been meeting there, and it's like a reunion of of all of our greatest friends in the industry and a welcome party for all of the newest leaders in the industry as well. Is your dance card full yet, Lucas? Because you seem to always have this thing mapped out like a pro.
Well, and it's really only for many, many, many years I've attended the NIC conferences, both spring and fall. I'd say close to 15 years now. And you hear that, when we were at the fall conference, that's one of the questions we were asking some of the guests that we have. And it's amazing when we have a guest on, then they say that they've attended NIC, for 25 years. It's incredible. And there's a reason why people do that.
Right.
It's because of the quality of the content and also the quality of the attendees to make these meetings and make these connections. I can attribute so much personal business connections really to the fall and the spring conference. I'm sure you hear that too, Lisa.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I think it's important to note too, that we have our industry veterans who really have been around for decades attending our conferences. But we also recognize the importance to continue to build that pipeline and build, leaders in our field. So we actually, and others may not know, we have a scholar program for our conference. So we do give scholarships. It's individuals who are in college, enrolled in degree programs, who might be looking at our space. And we know it's not always a nice, clean route to get into our industry. Sometimes it's happenstance a little bit. But so we actually have a contingent of what we call scholars. These are those students that attend, and we have, of course, their own meetup event and things of that nature. But a number of those have actually turned into, jobs and professions here in the field over the years. So I think it's important that, we recognize our industry veterans and some of those that were founding members of really this event years ago and part of NIC for many generations. But it's always important to bring, again, that new perspective into the industry. And I think I want, mentioning that scholar roundup and group, I think is an important one. And they're noted, they've got a certain color lanyard, and so you can spot them out. So those attending, welcome them and, tell them about, the industry and what your experience has been.
Well, it's such a valuable program, and I would love to see that program grow because I've often, as I've been out, outside of our typical industry events, when you go to universities or colleges and people are still trying to determine, hey, what am I going to do as far as a career?
Right.
And if someone could see NIC, I think it opens their eyes to the possibilities that really no matter what your skill set is, what you're studying,
Absolutely.
it can be applied in senior housing. And that's what we always try to say on this platform. And an event like NIC, it can be so eye-opening and energizing, I think, to a whole group of leaders that need to be in our industry for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I will tell you too, we're very optimistic. You mentioned the word energy. So we definitely feel like, we're going to be in a different place, in March when, compared to March of 2024. So we know that the borrowing rates are coming down from the Fed movement and so forth. And, we hit that a week before our fall conference in September. And I said everybody had a little more spring in their step. It was more psychological than anything. And it'll be interesting to see once we hit March, where are we going to start to hear about some behavior change and so forth? And because we know we've been in a very low cycle of development. We've been constrained by costs, borrowing costs and so forth. And there's been a little bit of distress. We're actually having a session around turning around distressed assets, because there is an element of that that's still lingering out there. It's been a tough couple of years. So how do you turn those around? What do you do with if you're in a position where you're operating one of those communities? So, but we are feeling very confident. I think generally there's a general more positive outlook moving forward. So we'll be interested to gauge that once we hit the first week of March and what's starting to percolate in 2025 in terms of some of that movement and development. We know, and you're going to hear it loud and clear in the opening session around the imbalance from a supply demand standpoint of what we are going to be facing in the next couple of years because of this, development drought. So it'll be interesting to get a read of attendees of, what's coming off the sidelines and when, and, who are sort of some of the first movers versus fast followers. So I think 2025 is going to be an interesting year, and having this the first week of March will be a somewhat early first quarter, late first quarter way to kick that off.
Lisa, I can tell you're optimistic. Lucas and I are ecstatic. We're excited. And our listeners, if you're on the fence, you're about to miss the train. So you got to get over there. You got to register. This event fills up really quickly. And San Diego, if nothing else, you just got to go to San Diego and
For
enjoy
the
it.
weather.
Yeah, absolutely. So what a great place to be in March. Lucas, I can't wait, man.
Neither can I. And so for our listeners that want to learn more, you can scroll down into the podcast show notes. We'll have links to everything that we've talked about today so that you can get quick access. And we definitely want to see you there. Lisa, thanks for spending so much time with us today.
Thanks, guys. It's always a pleasure. And before we know it, we'll see each other in San Diego.
And for more information, you can go to btgvoice.com. You can download this content and so much more. Hit us up on LinkedIn. Let's continue the conversation and hope to see you in San Diego. Thanks for listening to another great episode of Bridge the Gap.
Thanks for listening to Bridge the Gap podcast with Josh and Lucas. Connect with the BTG Network team and use your voice to influence the industry by connecting with us at btgvoice.com.